How can we get a full range of colors that we need from a scene with just 2 colors? I think it's a good thing to play with. In Quick Tip 197, I showed you how to set up a limited palette based on complementary colors, and I used for that particular limited palette blue and orange. Now, any limited palette of complementary colors can be set up by using the color wheel, just choosing a color and its opposite on the color wheel. Another way that you could do that is simply choose a color and then play with other colors to find out which one's going to give you a neutral, and you'll know that's the complement. So, but let's turn around just a little bit. Now, I had a different photo in Quick Tip 197, and I'm going to use that photo in Quick Tip 198, but I want to take just a pause here and use a different photo to show you how you can take a winter scene, or say a winter scene in an area where you have lots of deciduous trees, and you can use just this limited palette to interpret the whole scene. Now, one way that you can really apply a limited palette, a limited complementary palette, is when you have neutral colors to start with. So any subject that is made up of neutral colors is a good subject to use a complementary palette for interpreting. Okay, so let's take a look now. How would we? I want to do a study. I want to show you how to do a study when you're experimenting with finding ways to use a limited palette. So if we have this scene, you might say, okay, you have gray and you have blue, and you might be tempted to pull out something maybe like burnt umber. Well, you have a lot more ability to get exciting ranges of variations of color if you refrain from using something like burnt umber and you use a combination of blue and orange. Now, if you didn't see Quick Tip 187, go take another look, take a look at that and see how I set this palette up. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is just to show you a brief study of how we might find the colors here, the colors that we see here, and not only find them but maybe kind of enhance them just a little bit. So if we were using this scene, and I might do something like this to set the scene up, this would sort of divide the water area from the land area. And let's see, I'm not going to give it quite the slant that I see it having there. And then we might do something like this to indicate that this land area here. And well, we can decide whether we want to use that land area. And then we might do something like this to indicate the background tree area, like that. That just sort of divides the space to help us get going. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to start with what's in the in shadow areas first, and build from dark to light. And so then we can look at this. Now, here's the exciting thing. We have warm and cool. Here we have warm and cool. There's a wonderful way to utilize the limited complementary palette. So we can then decide, how do we want to interpret this? This feels more warm, so we can, and it's very, very dark. This this in shadow area that we see here. So we can begin right here in the darkest part. This is the warmest color. This is the dark value of the orange. And then we can add just a little bit of cool to that, get it slightly neutralized, bring it over here, but be sure that we keep it warm. And then we can begin to sort of block in. Let's get that little bit more paint on that brush. We can begin to kind of block in what we see there as in shadow. And that one thing that is necessary to do when you're painting is to switch your attention from what you know it to be to its visual element. So we know that's in shadow, but the visual element is dark. So if I switch my attention, I don't think about that as being an edge of a body of water, but I just think about that as being the darkest dark. I'm more able to see exactly what it's doing. So we see that there, where we see some more really dark back in here, so we can just punch that in, and that also seems to be kind of warm. But if you'll notice, this color is actually, I haven't got it thoroughly mixed, so it actually is kind of a blend of warm and cool. We see back in here, we see some more darkest darks, and we kind of see those weaving in and out there as the darkest darks. Now, as we look into I'm going to hold off on those vertical darks for just a moment. As we move into this area, which is the distance, we see those darks getting a little bit lighter. So let's just think in terms of just value and temperature. And so I see that as a little bit lighter, so I'll move up the value scale, and it remains warm. This dark in here, and as it goes across there, remains warm. So I'll pull some blue, which is cool. Then I'll move into the same value area, which is about right here, of warm, and add just enough warm to that so that I can feel that as being the same warmth. And let's see what happens then. So this is happening right about in here, and you can see it's just a little bit darker, lighter, just a little bit lighter than the dark we already have there. So this is block in. Now this is just a way to block in before you start putting in details, just getting those basic elements down. And so we can just make a very quick general block in, and that's that darkest area, and then there's another dark area that goes across there. So see, if I'm thinking totally in terms of value and temperature, I don't even have to think about the color right now. If I'm thinking totally in terms of value and temperature, and then translate what I see here, I'm able to set a stage that will allow this to develop into an interpretation of what I'm looking at. All right, so that would be that. Now, as this moves up, we see that it's getting lighter, much lighter. It's going into that light area of the value scale. So it's about a middle value. If you squint at it, it's about a middle value, and it seems to be getting a little bit. Is it getting just a little bit cooler? Let's see. So we can experiment. I'm going to start right in here. This is about the middle value of the blue. Now, if I do this, I'll hold my brush here. I say, nope, that's not it. But look what happens. I go into that same middle value area of the orange mixture. And let's get the orange on there. And look. See how close that is. Now if I turn it over on the back there where there's more blue, nope, that's too blue, but I'm right in that value area, in that temperature area of the thing I'm observing there. So I can get not thoroughly mixed, but I can play around with that. Now let's see here. Yes. Now you see what can happen here if we stay in this value area. And we interpret this value area according to what we're looking at there. We can alternate the cool and the warm by not thoroughly mixing it in the brush, and that can give us a kind of a vibrant color. Now we're not trying to make trees yet, not trying to make trees at all. We're just blocking in what we see as that vibrant color, and are making what we see in the distance there a more vibrant color. Now we can begin to add a little bit more of the cool in. You see what happens when you add a little bit more of that cool in, add a little bit more of the cool. You see, I'm just referring to the blue is cool and the orange is warm, and add a little bit. See there what happens? You get that kind of little vibration of those colors when you think of it in terms of the temperature and the value. Now I'm going to give it a little bit of a blend here and bring those down here. Now, and this is not going to be a completed painting. This is a study, a color study. And what a color study does It gives you information about possibilities that you can do. So when you're doing a color study where your intention is not to show it, not to exhibit it, not try to make a painting, but you're just trying to inform yourself of possibilities. And you can use that information then later on for a painting, or hundreds of paintings in fact. And so let's look at what's happening. Does this seem to be getting a little bit cooler as it goes down? So if it gets a little cooler, I make it a little cooler. Maybe a little cooler and a little lighter. So a little cooler and a little lighter as it goes down. And there we go. And you see now already how we're beginning, I'm now feeling, maybe I can make a little, pull a little bit more of that cool into this area right in here. And then continue like that. That begins, that is, well, what's happening over here, it's getting cooler at the bottom as it goes over into this direction. In some places we see it cooler, and some places we see it warmer. So you see it cooler. When you see it cooler, we can add just throw in brush loads of cooler color. When you see it warmer, pull that into the warmer color, and you get that a little bit warmer. And then you can begin to feel how those cools and warms play against each other. There we go. See, you can feel that warmer color. Now get that a little bit. There we go. Okay, you feel that, how that warmer color feels as it blends in, or as it interweaves with that cooler color. Cool, warm, cool, warm. It's just a wonderful way of exploring possibilities for winter scenes, especially when the whole thing seems to be drab and gray. You can enhance that by working or playing with that cool and warm idea. Now as it's coming down, it seems to be getting a little bit warmer and a little bit darker. So if you describe these things to yourself while you're working, that too helps you to interpret and use these cool and warm combinations. So if I see it getting warmer and darker, then I move more towards the orange here, more towards the warm. I move more towards the dark area of the value scale as I'm moving towards that darker color. So talking to yourself about what you're seeing in terms of, is it cooler, is it warmer, is it darker, is it lighter. Now here I see cooler among warmer. In the similar value area, cooler among warmer. As we move into this little area right in here, I see very, very light. So this is where the light's hitting on the surface, and it seems to be cooler to me. So let's move it a little bit more towards the cool. Now, one thing to caution you about is that usually the warmer, this is ultramarine blue I'm working with here, and usually the warmer colors are maybe a little bit stronger in tinting strength and requires a little bit more in amount of cool. See, that comes off as warm there, so that means we need to add more of the cool. There we go. There we go. There's that cooler. Get that feeling of that cooler color as we interpret that little area right there. It's getting darker as it comes into this area right in here, getting darker. And then we begin to see, and I'm not going to go into great detail there, just want to get that idea of the cool and the warm working. And now the other thing I'm going to do, I'm not going to try to go through the whole study. I want to get you started in a way of thinking about how you can use cool and warm to interpret a winter scene. So let's look at what happens then when we address the sky. Well, first of all, let's just we'll just address the whole sky first of all. We could go ahead and lay in those gray areas that we see and work the sky around that, or we can work the sky in and put the gray areas in. Now if I go into the pure cool color, pure blue, pure ultramarine blue and white, now watch what happens. If I put that down, that's a little bit, feels a little bit dark. Let's get a little bit lighter. And when I put that down here next to that warm, see how cool that feels? So I can actually interpret what I see as the blue in that sky just with the ultramarine blue and white. But it makes it feel like it makes it feel like it has more dimension because of these warmer colors we see beside it. So we can do that. Then we can move in to that same, it's a same, really a similar value, really a similar value of the warm we see there. So when we're in that sky area, we'll make a mistake if we start calling those things trees. We need to think only in terms of what color is it, how warm is it, what color, what value. And so I can move now to the cool, it's a warmer. I've got some cool in the brush, and I'll warm that just a little bit, and let's just see what happens. Same value, or just, okay, it needs to be a little bit darker. That's what I see. When I squint at this, it almost disappears in the sky. So just a little bit darker, perhaps. Just not much, but just a little bit darker. A lot of times when people are doing things like this, where there we go, where there are winter trees in front of sky area, they'll just make it way too dark, make those tree areas way too dark. But if you pay attention to the values that you're looking at there, as well as the temperature of the things you're looking at, then you'll see that it feels more natural. Now we see also behind here, we'll see the same thing going on. We see warm, but very much almost the same value of the sky, just a little bit, perhaps a little bit darker. And so warmer but darker. As it moves back in here, let's get that just a little bit darker as it moves into, as those what we would call trees. There we go. See, just a little bit darker there, and not really. So start getting that too dark, then it starts feeling out of sync. And then we can move in and let's rinse the brush here and see how we would block in. Yes, that interprets quite well. And we see how we would block in the rest of the sky then among those areas, and just going back into that cool color that we see. And I think rather than show those clouds, I'm just going to go ahead and block that in, give that a little bit more of the neutrality in there, so to kind of suggest maybe a wispiness of clouds. Pull a little bit more of that in there like that and get that more blended into that area. And then over here we could do this, a similar thing like this. And then we have all those little vertical trees, all these little vertical trees that are warm and a little bit darker. And so let's see if I've got, I need to get that just a little bit more defined there. So remember, we're just doing a study, we're just getting information here. So okay, I'll get that just a tiny bit darker, this area right in here and in here. And then what we can do, when we see these verticals in front of that, now we ask the question, squint, how much darker is it? If you make it too dark, it feels out of sync. So I'm going to move just a little bit more towards in the dark area of the value scale and pick it up just very slightly darker. See, that is the advantage and real miracle actually of doing this value line, is that you can better control the values that you're working with and get things just gradually a little bit darker or a little bit lighter if you need. Now let's see, have we got that? How is that? That's about the right value. That's about the value that we're looking at for those tree trunks. And so I won't do them all, but I like to just do kind of a little stamping motion where, let's turn this way just a bit. It's just a kind of a stamping motion where you show tree trunks, but they don't look like painted lines. Let me bring this down. Now you notice they get a little bit darker as they come to the bottom. These tree trunks, you can see some of the shadow on them as they're coming to the bottom. Make that just a little bit darker. In some of those in front, well, let's get a few more trunks on here first before I talk about that. And so see, I can just use the tip of the brush and kind of a stamping motion and paying attention to the direction of those tree trunks as they move uphill like that, sort of. And then if you have those little bitty limbs, you might need to move to another brush, but we could do just a kind of a wispy movement of the brush to kind of suggest that. Now let's just focus in this area right here. We begin to see that, oh, that comes down a little bit further, so a little bit darker, so it comes down a little bit further, so we can bring it down a little bit further and a little darker, and it kind of varies in cool and warm. So talking to yourself like that. Is it darker? There we go, that's darker. As this area comes down here, is it darker? Is it cooler? Is it warmer? Now I'm making that a little bit warmer than I actually see it right there, because I think that would make it more exciting, and so on as we come down. Now the other thing is that it's not just all dark. There are some lights there on the tree trunks, and so on those tree trunks in front, but they seem to be cooler. So I would move over into the cooler blue, and let's just make up one here. So just throw one on the side here and see that that light is right here, and then kind of stamp that color on that as we move up. So you see, this is a way of thinking, and working out, responding to the cool that you see there, making the cool areas that you see here cool here. If they're dark there, you make them dark here. If they feel warmer there, you make them warmer here. So you're working back and forth between cool and warm. Now, on this quick tip, I won't take time to do a complete study. I know that a lot of you would like to see that, but I would just want to show you a way of thinking. It would be exciting for you to find a winter photo. You can go to pixabay.com and just type in winter scene or winter photo or something like that, and you might be able to get a nice photo. Or if you live in an area where all the leaves are already gone, and you have lots and lots of gray forest, then it'd be perfect to take your own photo. Then try this method. Try just using a limited palette of two complementary colors, of a complementary set, I should say, of the blue and the orange, and you'll see that if you can switch your thinking, not what it is, but the color or the temperature that you're seeing, because you know that if you're seeing cool, it's going to be blue. You know, if you see warm, it's going to be orange. And so then you only need to think about temperature and value when you do your study, and you start out general like that and just work step by step by step, and I think you'll be very, very happy with what you see. Now within your next quick tip, I'm going to add one more little element so that we can broaden the range of the color and still have a limited palette. So if you found this helpful, and if you have something that you'd like for me to explore, leave a comment right down here, and we'll be happy to put that on our schedule. And lots of full-length tutorials on DianneMize.com, many of them exploring the magic of color. Also, you can find lots of other goodies there and opportunities to study live with me. So there's your quick tip.